Most of us who have tried to achieve a nice, clean-looking RGB build have had some troubles in the past. Now, why is that exactly, and what are the solutions that you can only hope get implemented? There are several types of RGB standards, RGB controllers, headers, all of that, and it seems like every single manufacturer and every single brand has their own personal controller, their own personal header and connectors and their softwares, and they often don't like playing nice with each other, or if they do, they tend to crash, fail, and just generally not work. Now, what is the situation right now and why is this a thing? Well, we have to look at it first of all from the business perspective by having your own proprietary connector and your own proprietary controller and software. You are kind of forcing people that buy into your brand to buy into your brand and connector on other products. For example, if you have an Asus motherboard, you will be locked into buying. You won't be locked into buying, but you will be more incentivized and a lot more tempted to buy into Aura compatible products. Same goes for Mystic Lighting, RGB Fusion, you name it, any any software that is specific to a type of controller. Now, those are the obvious incentives for companies to keep the status quo as it is, this fragmented wild west of RGB that basically makes it impossible to easily have a clean build that synchronizes all together without using different softwares. Because you can use different softwares. You can easily use Aura to control your motherboard, RAM, and I don't know, LED strips. And then if you have, let's say, Corsair fans, you can have a dedicated controller for that with running different software, but you'll just have to manually control it without actually doing it automatically in one program that controls everything, which is the ideal that we all want when we are aiming for synchronization. The perfect example is, for example, the RGB headers on motherboards. You have 12-volt headers, you have 5-volt headers. Some of them are 12-volt GRB, so green, red, blue. Others are 5-volt, and then with different connectors from the Asus motherboards. You have other connectors that look the same, but they are not the same. And some have 3 pins, some have 4 pins, depending if they're 12 or 5-volt. And it's generally a mess to actually it's actually very possible, and this is something amazing that should not be happening in 2019. I mean, we're kind of advanced tech wise. This kind of thing should not exist, which is you can actually very possibly fry out your motherboard, not your motherboard but the header on your motherboard, or fry out the LED strips by plugging it into the wrong header. That is a very possible situation. Thankfully, it does not happen often, and thankfully, most products have countermeasures. Like, for example, if you're trying to plug a 5-volt into a 12-volt header, or the opposite. For example, it's still a 4-pin head, as you might have seen here. For example, this is 4 pins at 12-volt. The 5-volt is also 4 pins here. So this is a situation where you could possibly make a mistake and fry it. Thankfully, there are some countermeasures. For example, on this 3-pin connector, it is a 4-pin space, but usually the cable that will go here will have the 3rd pin here that does not actually connect, will be blocked and not an open hole. So that will keep you from, for example, plugging it into the wrong header with 4 pins and frying your component because it is the wrong pin and it does not play nicely, and it could damage either the header on the motherboard or the LEDs on the component you're connecting. Now, the headers you just saw are the headers for several motherboard brands, for Asus, MSI, Gigabyte, for example. There are other standards that are not motherboard specific. For example, Thermaltake, and I did a video of this a while back when I was reviewing the Thermaltake ring fans and the controller that comes included with them. They connect to only to the fan hub, so not directly to the motherboard. The fans connect to the hub via a variation of a USB 2.0 header. They connect to the fan hub, and the fan hub connects to the motherboard also via a USB 2.0 header, so they are compatible across motherboards. Obviously, this raises other issues, like for example, coming out of sleep mode, the controller often has to be restarted software-wise because it stops responding. So there are other issues with it, and obviously there are other limitations. But in other way, there are advantages. I'll go into it in a bit anyway. But this, although I have had my criticisms of Thermaltake's software and hardware implementation, which you will see in that video I mentioned. I will link it, or I have already linked it here. Depends on how I edit this. As you can see, I have criticisms, but on the other hand, now looking back and having looked a bit more into it and having had some experience with Asus Aura now, uh, I do see advantages in that model, and I am going to, for the rest of this video, be talking more about how things could be, than so much exploring the situation right now. Because right now, like I said, it's kind of the wild west of RGB, every man for himself, and each company has its standard and its software, and they don't play nice with each other. What we as PC builders, gamers, enthusiasts, whatever we classify ourselves as, should be pushing right now is a unified solution. I'm sure all of us that are old enough remember the wild west of phone chargers, for example, where each mobile phone had a different charger and none of them were working with each other, and you had 10 charges across the entire family. That's also not a nice situation. And the same thing could happen easily to the RGB lights if people actually, not people but companies, actually work with each other to create a standardized, unified solution. They could still have their own software if they wanted, with their own special effects and whatever they want, but at least the base product would be compatible, and you would be able to use everything together with everything and create a unified build that you can control with one controller and one software. Now, how can this be achieved? My personal experience with Asus Aura is that controlling, for example, the Thermaltake Premier controller that connects to the Aura header, it identifies the controller as one entity. So I cannot give individual commands to each fan. I cannot have one fan on Rainbow, one fan on Blink. Not that it looks nice, I don't know why I would want that, but I would like to be able to do that, if you know what I mean. And to be able to control each fan or each device that is connected to the controller, control it individually, and not just control the controller as a whole. So that is something that is a limitation of Aura. Now, I am not sure if it's the limitation hardware-wise, I think so, or if it's just the software that needs to catch up. That's another issue I'm going to delve into a little bit later. So, hardware-wise, at first glance, from the experience that I have, I believe that Thermaltake's approach, even though flawed at the software level and at the amount of customization that they let us have, is possibly the best one because RGB headers, in what I see, and I am not an expert. Again, remember, I'm doing this with these videos in general from a user perspective. I do a little bit of research, but I don't go into every single, header and circuit connection and all that. So, from what I have been realizing, RGB headers are a bit more limited hardware-wise. A USB 2.0 header connected to a controller seems to be a lot more flexible in terms of the customization that it will allow us. So, in my eyes, that would be the way to go, either via 2.0 USB header or via a new header that could be developed specifically for that purpose, or a 3.0 header, SATA header, whatever. A header that would give you more flexibility than the current RGB headers would probably be a good option to allow you to control each individual device and not just each individual controller. So that would be my wish hardware-wise, to be able to have full-on customization. Now, software-wise is also kind of a bit of a mess. Um, as you saw, my criticism of Thermaltake software was, for example, the sleep mode recovery. I had to restart the program. There were issues with not being able to set fan curves as well. I mean, I could do it in the BIOS, but it would be nice to do it in the fan control program. Not that Oz's Aura does it either, but it would be nice to control all fan features from one program. Um, a lot of the effects, the different lightning styles and modes and effects, they don't allow you a lot of customization. For example, a lot of thermal takes effects or Oz's auras effects, they don't really allow you to adjust, for example, brightness or speed, the speed that the effect performs. And I mean, why not then? That is something that is actually quite important, and especially in cases like mine, desks like mine, that if the light is at full brightness, it's a bit way too bright for um, for me because it's just behind the glass under the desk. It's not in a case where it gets, blocked the light, I mean, or anything. So that is something that would be very useful. Other things include, for example, being able to set each individual LED's color, which is not possible in Asus Aura right now, even though hardware-wise it should be. Even if it does not identify each fan as an individual device, they could easily program it to make it identify or even manually input how many LEDs are on that controller. For example, you know that the fan has 12 LEDs, so if you have 10 fans on the controller, for example, that's 120 LEDs then. And you could easily save them as a group, and you could manually make groups of LEDs and control them as one. So group one do this, group two do that, and you could have group one LED 1 to 12, and then group two the 12 to make the groups like that, and be able to control it in a more coordinated manner if you actually gave users full control and full customization ability to do that. And that is something that, if even with the current hardware, would be possible. So the software needs to be developed in a more serious manner. And I know it's just RGB, it's not top priority for manufacturing companies, but let's also remember that we're talking about billion, trillion-dollar companies. It's Asus, Gigabyte that we're talking about, companies like that. So they can easily spare a few developers or expand their team or whatever to actually make the software work. Because even now, Aura crashes regularly. It fails to sync up regularly. I have it on a color gradient right now, and I have the color gradient on reverse order. So because if I have it on the normal order, it fails to sync several of the fans, and a few of them will be shining all sorts of colors. One of them will be off, and then the other one will be working properly. And if I have it on reverse, they work as they should. So what changes in being reverse or not? Hardware-wise and current voltage-wise, nothing. It's just the software being, and I apologize for the word, completely pants on head retarded. It's just the software not being developed properly. And that seems to be a lot of the issue as well. So I know it's not the top priority, RGB customization, but it's a feature, it's an advertised feature, it's something people care about. So I think companies should pay a bit more attention to that and actually deliver proper products and proper software. Because what we're getting now, it's like it works sometimes, and you have to kind of cobble it together like some weird shiny RGB Frankenstein monster, and you control it via several programs because otherwise you can't get stuff done. On the same note, it would be nice if you could use fans from one brand and control it with software from another. Because why? Because the software, the light effects differ from brand per brand, even though LEDs are LEDs, and in theory they should all be able to do the same effects because it's just a matter of what color lights up, what order it lights up, and what timing it lights up. So any RGB can do any effect as long as they're addressable. So being able to import or export lighting profiles between softwares should also be a possibility, or simply use the software from one company to run fans from the other if everything was standardized. But obviously, it's bad business practice for them to do this because in that case, you are no longer locked to their ecosystem and you are no longer forced to purchase another Thermaltake or another Corsair or another whatever because all your rest of your stuff is it. So Maybe you would like to, maybe you suddenly found a better product that you like more, but it goes against your compatibility ecosystem. So you might double, think again on that and not do it. No, and I'm not advising people to choose products based on RGB. You should choose products based on quality. But if the quality is similar or not, not much worse or not much better, then it is a factor that you consider. I mean, of course you do. Quality is important, but if it's similar quality, then ease of use is actually a very big factor, and ease of setup as well. And that's where we're taking the hit here. It's on ease of use. So obviously, I don't have much power. I don't even have a big audience or anything, and this is not an enormous issue. But I would urge people, whoever watches this, if they have any way to put any pressure. I mean, we can all put pressure with our wallets, but in the end, you can say, "Oh, I'm boycotting this company or the other one because they don't have a unified standard." Yeah, but none of them do. So which one are you gonna buy and support then to send out the message that way? Yeah, you can't. Yeah, but yeah. Anyway, if anyone knows any idea that is any initiative that is going on out there, uh, then share it with us. Any initiative that is in with the aim to kind of petition for a unified standard, because that is something that is sorely needed in this field. Most things are standardized right now. In the computer world, SATA ports, USB headers, everything really is standardized. And then we have this weird dark age of RGB, which is truly a dark age, even though it's all lights and shiny. And it's a freaking wild mess. And so yeah, that is kind of something that as a PC builder that happens to like RGB, if done properly, I sorely miss because it's difficult to do it properly when you can even barely get it to sync with each other at all. So yeah, that's my wish. And right now, I think it is realistic to wish for better software because that's a lot easier to develop and implement and a lot easier for the companies to improve on. But in the long run, I think we should all sorely hope, need, and pressure for a standardized hardware configuration with standardized connectors and headers and controllers, and just let competition do its job and let people choose products based on quality and price and not on what ecosystem they are for and being locked to that ecosystem because otherwise it's a headache to get everything running properly. So, this has been Ethic PC Guy. Sorry for the rant. I know it was not very technical, it was more of an opinion piece, but yeah, I just wanted to get this out of my chest because it is really annoying and really frustrating when you want to make things look nice and it's just not easy sometimes. So yeah, Attic PC guy out.